Welcome ladies and gentlemen to another Bentley Navy Tutors video. Today I'll be talking about biology at a Year 9 level. I don't want to babble on too much because there are 33 parts to this, so it's probably going to be a longer video and I don't want it to get too boring like Jeremy's videos are. But two things before I go into it. Firstly, I may have forgotten certain parts, gotten things wrong, or just cut them out because, I don't know, they're a bit of a trek. So make sure you're doing your own research in collaboration with this. And secondly, I realized I missed a Jeremy roast in the Earth and Environmental Science video. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you go check it out after this. But yeah, I sincerely apologize for that, and I'll try and make up for it in this video with more Jeremy roasts, and hopefully I can get the counter right. And it was a bit of a Jeremy mistake in general. I mean, we all know he has trouble with counting. But anyway, I'll get on to the first one, which is explaining why multicellular organisms require specialized organs and systems. The first four were handwritten by Jeremy. So honestly, it looks like a 3-year-old's written it, and that's probably still offensive to 3-year-olds, but I'll try to do my best to read it. So these organisms require this complexity so they can carry out different things required for life, such as reproduction and respiration. So yeah, Jeremy's gone really in depth there, but yeah, it wasn't too hard of a question, so I guess that's justified. So the second part is recalling examples of tissues, organs, and systems in humans. So firstly, we'll go with tissues. Two examples of tissues are muscle tissue and nervous tissue, and just basically just tissues in the human body. And tissues together make up organs, and the examples of organs are the lungs, heart, and the brain. And then groups of organs make up systems such as the nervous system, respiratory system, and the reproductive system. The third one is about recalling the systems involved in providing cells with their requirements and removing waste. So firstly, the respiratory system provides oxygen to the cells, which allows them to make energy. And secondly, the circulatory system actually gives the oxygen to the cells. Then the excretory system kind of obviously just take the waste away from the cells. The urinary system does the same, and also the respiratory system gets rid of carbon dioxide from the cells. The fourth one is defining the term homeostasis. So homeostasis is a biological condition that allows humans to self-regulate their bodies in order to maintain conditions that are optimal for life. It's basically an equilibrium point where negative feedback is used to maintain optimal condition. Now onto the ones I've written, so hopefully it's a bit easier to understand, a bit more in depth. So the fifth one is about distinguishing between negative and positive feedback mechanisms. So feedback is a response within a system that influences the continued activity or productivity of that system. So positive feedback is an internal response which results in the amplification, growth of an output signal. It means your body is breaking away from a state of homeostasis. It's less common than negative feedback, but occurs in specific situations such as childbirth with more contractions, temperature increasing when you're sick so the body can try and kill whatever is making you sick, and also blood clotting so that your body can send more stuff to clot your blood. Negative feedback is an internal response resulting in the inhibition of slowing down of a process. The purpose of negative feedback is to return the body to a state of homeostasis. It occurs more often in the body and helps to maintain various conditions in the body. For example, body temperature regulation and blood pressure. So number 6 is describing an example of negative feedback to maintain homeostasis. So one of the most simplest examples, and if you need an example, it's always better to go with the simplest option. So a simple example is thermoregulation. And this is if your body temperature decreases or increases, your body has a certain response to this. So if your body temperature decreases and you're cold, heating mechanisms kick in, such as shivering and goosebumps, and this then results in your body returning to a normal temperature. And then alternatively, if your body temperature is too hot, then cooling mechanisms kick in, such as sweating, which then results in you cooling it back down. Number 7 is about outlining the role of the kidneys in maintaining water balance. So homeostasis requires that water intake and output be balanced. And urine produced in the kidneys accounts for the largest amount of water leaving the body. The kidneys can adjust the concentration of the urine to reflect the body's water needs, conserving water if the body is dehydrated or making urine more dilute to expel excess water when necessary. ADH is a hormone that helps the body to retain water by increasing water reabsorption by the kidneys. Number 8 is about recalling 4 types of receptor cells. So firstly, there's chemoreceptors, which detect the presence of chemicals in the body, and these are located on the medulla oblongata. Secondly, there's thermoreceptors, which detect changes in temperature, and these are located in the dermis, skeletal muscles, liver, and hypothalamus. Thirdly, there's mechanoreceptors, which detect mechanical forces, and these are located in the joint capsular tissue, ligaments, tendons, muscle, and skin. And finally, there's photoreceptors, which detect light during vision, and even Jeremy could get this, but they're located in the retina of the eye. Number 9 is about describing the structure of the eye. So the human eyes are the most complicated sense organs in the human body. From the muscles to the tissues to nerves and blood vessels, every part of the human eye is responsible for a certain action. So the eye is not perfectly spherical, instead it's two separate segments fused together. It is made up of several muscles and tissues that come together to form a roughly spherical structure. So I'll start with the external structure of an eye. The parts of an eye, and these are the parts of an eye that are visible externally, and firstly we'll go with the sclera. I'll probably pronounce that wrong, and I've probably done that multiple times and will continue to, but just excuse it, hopefully you get the point anyway. So that is the white visible portion in your eye, and it's made up of dense connective tissue, and it protects the inner parts of your eye. Next is the conjunctiva. It lines the sclera and made up of stratified squamous epithelium. I probably pronounced that wrong as well. And it keeps your eye moist and clear and provides lubrication for secreting mucus and tears. Next is the cornea, and it's the transparent anterior or front part of our eye. It covers our pupil and the iris. The main function of this is to refract the light along with the lenses. Next is the iris, and it's the pigmented colored portion of the eye. The main function of the iris is to control the diameter of the pupil according to the light source. And finally, for the external structure is the pupil. It's the small aperture located in the center of the iris, and it allows light to enter and focus on the retina. And now to the internal structure of an eye. The internal components of an eye are the lens. It's a transparent biconvex lens of an eye. The lens is attached to a ciliary body by ligaments, and the lens, along with the cornea, refracts light so it focuses on the retina. The retina is the innermost layer of the eye. It is light sensitive and acts as the film of a camera. 3 layers of neural cells are present in them. They are the ganglion, bipolar, and photoreceptor cells. It converts the image into electrical nerve impulses for the visual perception by the brain. Next, we've got the optic nerve, and it's located at the posterior portion of the eyes. The optic nerves carry all the nerve impulses from the retina to the human brain for perception. Next is the aqueous humor. It is a watery fluid present between the cornea and the lens. It nourishes the eye and keeps it inflated. And finally is the vitreous humor. It's a transparent jelly-like substance present between the lens and the retina. It contains 99% water, collagen, proteins, etc. And the main function of the vitreous humor is to protect the eyes and maintain its spherical shape. So the next one is about explaining, using the particle model, the transmission of sound in different media. So sound waves need to travel through mediums such as solids, liquids, and gases. Sound waves move through each of these mediums by vibrating the molecules in matter. The molecules in solids are packed very tightly. Liquids are not packed as tightly, and gases are packed very loosely. This enables sound to travel much faster through a solid than a gas. Sound travels about 4 times faster and farther in water than it does in air. This is why whales can communicate over huge distances in the ocean. Sound waves travel about 13 times faster in wood than air, and they also travel faster on hotter days as the molecule bumps into each other more and more often when it is cold. Next, we've got describing how the ear functions to provide hearing, and also you need to be able to label parts of the human ear. So hearing starts with the outer ear. When a sound is made outside the outer ear, the sound waves or vibrations travel down the external auditory canal and strike the eardrum. The eardrum vibrates, and then these vibrations are passed to 3 tiny bones in the middle of the ear called the ossicles. The ossicles amplify the sound, and then they send the sound waves to the inner ear into the fluid-filled hearing organ, the cochlea. Once the sound has reached the inner ear, they convert it into electrical impulses. The auditory nerve sends these impulses to the brain, and then the brain translates these electrical impulses as sound. Next is outlining functions of the nervous system. So the nervous system has 3 overlapping functions based on the sensory input, integration, and motor output. This nervous system is a highly integrated system. So firstly, we've got sensory input. Sensory input comes from the many sensory receptors that monitor changes occurring inside and outside the body. The total sum of the information gathered by these receptors is called sensory input. The nervous system processes and interprets sensory input and decides what action should be taken. The nervous system activates effector organs such as muscles and glands to cause a response called motor output. Secondly, we've got integration. At a more integrative level, the primary function of the nervous system is to control and communicate information through the body. It does this by extracting information from the environment using sensory receptors, and this sensory input is sent to the central nervous system, which determines an appropriate response. Once the response is activated, the nervous system sends signals via motor output to muscles or glands to initiate the response. In humans, the sophistication of the nervous system allows for language, abstract representations of concepts, transmission of culture, and many other features of society that would not otherwise exist. My throat is very dry, so I'm just going to take a quick drink break and I'll be back in a sec. Alright, back from the drink break, so we'll continue with the next one. We're about halfway done now, and this one is describing the structure of the nerve cells, a reflex arc, and a synapse, or a synapse, I'm not sure which one it is. So firstly, nerve cells. Although the nervous system is very complex, nervous tissues consist of just two basic types of nerve cells, neurons and glial cells. Neurons are the structural and functional units of the nervous system. They transmit electrical signals called nerve impulses. Glial cells provide support for neurons. For example, they provide neurons with nutrients and other materials. As shown in the image up in the corner, a neuron consists of three basic parts: the cell body, dendrites, and axon. The cell body contains the nucleus and other cell organelles. The dendrites extend from the cell body and receive nerve impulses from other neurons, and the axon is a long extension of the cell body that transmits nerve impulses to other cells. The axon branches at the end, forming axon terminals, and these are the points where a neuron communicates with other cells. I'm sure you wanted to know that. I probably won't even remember that, but it might be good to know anyway. Next is the reflex arc. So the simplest arrangement of a reflex arc consists of the receptor, an interneuron, and an effector. Together, these units form a functional group. Sensory cells carry input from the receptor to a central interneuron, which makes contact with the motor neuron. The motor neuron carries different impulses to the effector, which produces the response. Three types of neurons are involved in this reflex arc, but a two-neuron arc in which the receptor makes contact directly with motor neurons also occurs. In a two-neuron arc, simple reflexes are prompt, short-lived, and automatic, and involve only a part of the body. Examples of simple reflexes are the contraction of a muscle in response to stretching, the blink of an eye when the cornea is touched, and salivation at the sight of food. Reflexes of these types are usually involved in maintaining homeostasis. Finally, a synapse or synapse is the point of connection between two neurons or between a neuron and a muscle or gland. Electrochemical communication between neurons takes place at these junctions. The synapse E consists of three elements. Firstly, the presynaptic membrane, which is formed by the terminal button of an axon. Two, the postsynaptic membrane, which is composed of a segment of dendrite or cell body. And finally, the space between these two structures, which is called the synaptic cleft. Next, we're going to contrast reflex reactions and actions under conscious control. So there are two types of reflex responses, and these are reflex actions that are rapid responses to a stimulus by one or more organs. And an example of this can be when we touch something hot, and there's a rapid response to move from the hot surface, like you jerk your hand away or something like that. And then there's also conditioned reflexes, and this will initially involve learning a skill such as riding a bike. At some point during the learning, conscious thought was required to keep the bike balanced, going in the correct direction, and pedaling, as well as a host of other things. Eventually, we develop a number of conditioned reflexes that we don't need to think about turning the handlebars, ringing the bell, or pedaling. The major difference between these is that reflex actions and consciously thought out actions is the speed of the action. Conscious thought requires time for the brain to consider the options and work out the action and send the appropriate message to the motor organs, for example, the arms and legs. This takes a relatively long time compared to the reflex reactions, and during that time, the appropriate response can be too late. A reflex response bypasses the brain and goes via the central nervous system and the spinal cord. This response time is infinitely faster, and therefore the appropriate response can be made. Next, we've got to describe the structure and function of the brain. Obviously, this is why I'm doing this video, because Jeremy has no experience with this, doesn't have a brain, for anyone who didn't get that. So the brain receives information through our 5 senses: sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing, often many at a time. It assembles the messages in a way that has meaning for us, and can store this information in our memory. The brain controls our thoughts, memory and speech, movement of the arms and legs, and the function of many other organs in our body. The cerebrum is divided into 2 halves, the right and left hemispheres. They are joined by a bundle of fibers called corpus callosum, and they transmit messages from one side to the other. Each hemisphere controls the opposite side of your body. So if you had a stroke occur on the right side of your brain, your left arm or leg may be weak or paralyzed. The cerebrum is responsible for the initiation of movement, coordination of movement, temperature, touch, vision, hearing, judgment, reasoning, problem solving, emotions, and learning. The cerebrum coordinates voluntary movements such as posture, balance, coordination, speech, and results in a smooth and balanced muscular activity. The brainstem regulates the heart rate, breathing, sleeping, and eating, and also plays a role in conduction. Next is outlining the function of the endocrine system. So the endocrine system consists of endocrine glands, which release hormones into the bloodstream. This lets the hormones travel to cells in other parts of the body. These hormones help control mood, growth and development, the way our organs work, metabolism, and reproduction. The endocrine system regulates how much of each hormone is released, and this can depend on the level of hormones already in the blood, or on levels of other substances in the blood like calcium. Many things affect hormone levels, such as stress, infection, and changes in the balance of fluid and minerals in blood. Next, we've got recalling the main glands of the endocrine system and some of the hormones they produce. So there's a few here. Firstly, the hypothalamus, and this has the major hormones of this are ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, and also oxytocin and various hormones that stimulate the pituitary gland, and this influences our nervous and hormonal systems. Next, we've got the pituitary gland, and the major hormones in this are luteinizing hormone, LH, follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, prolactin, growth hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, oxytocin, antidiuretic hormone, and androcorticotropic hormone. I already called that I was going to pronounce a lot of things wrong, and obviously I'm proving myself right. And this influences reproduction, growth, childbirth, breastfeeding, hormone regulation of the endocrine system. Next, we've got the pineal gland, and the major hormones this releases is melatonin, and this influences the sleep cycle. Next, the thyroid gland. The major hormones are triiodothyronine, thyroxine, and calcitonin, and the major influences it has is metabolism and bone health. Next, we've got the parathyroid gland, and this releases parathyroid hormone, and this influences calcium and vitamin D regulation. Next, we've got the adrenal glands. Major hormones are adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, and aldosterone. And the major influences are stress response and blood pressure / salt control. Next, we've got the pancreas. The major hormones in this are insulin, glucagon, and somatostatin, and this influences blood sugar control. Next, we've got the ovaries, which is for females only. The major hormones are estrogen and progesterone, and this influences female characteristics. And next is the testes, which is males only, and this hormone is released as testosterone, and this influences male characteristics. Next, we've got to compare and contrast the nervous and endocrine system. So the nervous system responds rapidly to stimuli by sending electrical action potentials along neurons, which in turn transmit these action potentials to their target cells using neurotransmitters, the chemical messenger of the nervous system. The response to stimuli by the nervous system is near instantaneous, although the effects are often short-lived. An example is the recoil mechanism of an arm when touching something hot, like I talked about before. In contrast, the endocrine system relies on hormones to elicit responses from target cells. These hormones are synthesized in specialized glands at a distance from their target and travel through the bloodstream or intercellular fluid. Upon reaching their target, hormones can induce cellular responses at a protein or genetic level, and this process takes significantly longer than that of the nervous system, as endocrine hormones must first be synthesized, transported to their target cell, and enter or signal the cell. However, although hormones act more slowly than a nervous impulse, their effects are typically longer lasting. Additionally, the target cells can respond to minute quantities of hormones and are sensitive to subtle changes in hormone concentration. For example, the growth hormones secreted by the pituitary gland are responsible for sustained growth during childhood. The next two topics, I'm probably not the most comfortable going to talking about them, so I've put a few diagrams on the screen, and you should probably be doing your own research with these two topics because these will probably be more relevant to any exam you have for Year 9 biography. Alright, if you made it this far, you're doing well. There's only about 5 or 6 to go. So yeah, just try and hold out. Hopefully you're not too bored yet. So the next one after those two are distinguishing between infectious and non-infectious diseases. Infectious diseases are transmitted from person to person through the transfer of a pathogen such as bacteria, viruses, fungi, or parasites. For example, SARS, COVID-19, and influenza. A non-infectious disease cannot be transmitted through a pathogen and is caused by a variety of other circumstantial factors, such as cystic fibrosis and most cancers. Next, we have to recall examples of diseases caused by each of the following pathogens: bacteria, fungi, viruses, and prions. Jeremy probably could do this, he probably has experience with most of them. But yeah. So firstly, bacterial, cholera, leprosy, tuberculosis. I'll skip that one. The plague, syphilis, and anthrax. With fungi, there's Candidiasis, Cryptococcus, Aspergillosis, Coccidioidomycosis, Histoplasmosis, Blastomycosis, Pneumocystis pneumonia. With viruses, there's measles, rubella, chickenpox or shingles, Rosella, smallpox, and fifth disease. And finally with prions, and it sounds like they're trying to make a joke of me now. I'll put the spelling on screen as well if you cannot understand what I'm saying, which you probably won't be able to. Try though. Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, Gersmann-Straussler-Scheinker syndrome, fatal familial insomnia, and Kuru, which is a nice easy one to finish with. Next, we've got to describe the role of skin, mucous membranes, chemical barriers, and other components of the first line of defense against diseases in the human body. So the first line of defense, or outside defense system, includes physical and chemical barriers that are always ready and prepared to defend the body from infection. These include your skin, tears, mucus, cilia, stomach acid, and urine flow, and friendly bacteria and white blood cells called neutrophils. The skin is the largest organ of the body. It acts as a barrier between pathogens and your body. Skin forms a waterproof mechanical barrier. Microorganisms that live all over your skin can't get through your skin unless it's broken or cut. So next is your nose, mouth, and eyes are obvious entries for pathogens. However, tears, mucus, and saliva contain an enzyme that breaks down the cell wall of many bacteria. Those that are not killed immediately are trapped in mucus and swallowed. Special cell lines protect the nose, throat, and other passages within your body. The inner lining of your gut and lungs also produce mucus to trap invading pathogens. Finally, the cilia, and these are very fine hairs lining your windpipe, which move mucus and trapped particles away from your lungs. Particles can be bacteria or material such as dust or smoke. Next, we've got stomach acid, and stomach acid kills bacteria and parasites that have been swallowed. And finally, in this section, urine flow. Your urine flow flushes out pathogens from the bladder area. Third last is explain how immunity against a particular pathogen is acquired. So when the body is exposed to viruses, bacteria, fungi, or parasites through an infection or vaccination, the immune system creates antibodies and immune cells that inactivate or destroy specific infectious organisms. If we encounter the same organism in the future, the immune system remembers that previous exposure and can defend your body. Second last is defining the terms epidemic and pandemic, two words we've heard a lot of this year. So an epidemic is a widespread occurrence of an infectious disease in a community at a particular time, and a pandemic is a disease prevalent over a whole country or the world. Finally, and not least, is recalling examples of animal and plant diseases. There's certain things that Jeremy might have, so again, he could be talking about this section. He's got experience in it. So for plant diseases, there's chestnut blight, butternut canker, dogwood anthracnose, Dutch elm disease, elm yellows, beech bark disease, sudden oak death. These are a lot easier than the human diseases. And then for animal diseases, Q fever, rabies, ringworm, anthrax, and influenza. So that's all for the Year 9 biography. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video, learned something, or at least remembered something that you were taught of a while ago. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and you can also follow our Instagram at Bentley David Tutors. I'll try to keep count of all the roasts about Jeremy. There weren't as many as I would have liked. I guess it's a bit harder once you're in the flow of the topic, but I'll work on it in the future. Thanks for watching, and hope you guys go well.